Yani, thank you to Professor Muhammad Yasir Yusuf, and of course to Dr. Professor Kamaruzzaman, whom I know for around 25 years now, I think. Uh, so we have a very old friendship since I was in Thailand. Uh, Thank you for inviting me to talk about Ismail al-Faruqi. If you look at my screen, that is Ismail al-Faruqi there behind me. His photo is there in my room. This is the only photo I have in my house, in my apartment. I am a direct student of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. Let me give a little background before I start my presentation. I am from Tanzania. I was born in Tanzania, and I was educated in Tanzania, India, and the United States with Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, Professor Mahmoud Ayub, and Professor Sayyid Hussain Nasser. And then I was teaching in Thailand for 30 years, and then I was at Malaysia at ISTEC IIUM for 4 years, and now I am here in Vietnam. Uh, I speak 6 languages, so I was globalized before globalization, and I'm kind of uh, uh, attached to for me, globalization is both about culture, language, and religions. Now, talking about Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, who's very dear to me, I've done several works on him. I've shared some of them with you already. I think Professor Kamaruzaman has shared them with you already. So let me go to my PowerPoint, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So again, my topic, as mentioned, is Ismail al-Faruqi, maker of contemporary Islam. This is the only portrait we have of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. We don't have much photograph because he was living in the age, it was not the age of photographs and phones and all that. So we have very few photographs of him. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim again. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala khatam al-Nabiyyin wal Mursaleen. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. And don't think of those who are killed in Allah's way as dead. No, they are alive and are provided sustenance from their Lord. As you all know, Professor Ismail al-Faruqi and his wife were murdered in Ramadan in 1986 in Philadelphia. This is the photo of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi and his wife Lamia al-Faruqi. And I received this photo recently of his qabr. It is written al-Faruqi, and both of them were buried together. They were a very good couple, very attached to each other. They lived together and then they're buried together. This is something very, very touching and heartwarming for us. This is another photo of the former student of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi who visited the grave recently and sent me this photograph. And the other photo is of his wife and him reading Surah Al-Fatiha at the grave of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. Now, let me introduce a little bit about the works of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. His most important works. The first was his Historical Atlas of Religions of the World, published in 1974. And then At-Tawheed, Its Implications for Thought and Life in 1982. And then this is the next latest version, which was published after his death in 1992 and 2000. And then after he died, another book was published, The Cultural Atlas of Islam, 1986. So it is a huge book. I think it's already available in Bahasa, Indonesia. Okay, this book, Islam and Knowledge, al-Faruqi's concept of religion and Islamic thought, is very interesting. I need to share this. This is a book a fellowship in honor of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, which I produced in 2012. I was very close with Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. I was his last student assistant. And so for 26 so years, I was always thinking that there was no fellowship ever done in honor of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. While there are so many fellowships, studies in honor of Sayyid Hussain Nasser, studies in honor of Fazlur Rahman, studies in honor of this professor, that professor, but nobody did any work in his honor. So in 2012, when I was at Georgetown University as a visiting professor, I discussed with Professor John Esposito, who is the first PhD graduate of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, that we should do this book in his honor. And I also talked with Triple IT, but they said we don't have time, but I said I have time. So Alhamdulillah, uh, we were able to produce this book. It's available online in PDF version. If you want, I can also send a copy to you. And on the same year, 2011, I and Professor John Esposito did a special issue of the American Journal of Islamic Social Sciences, which is now known as American Journal of Islam and Society. Also, a special issue for life and works of Ismail al-Faruqi. This also has very, very good articles in them. Now, when I was in 2010 to 2011, as I said, when I was doing research, I had access to all the works of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, his library, I mean. So I was digging through his letters, his books, and then his writings. And I have with me some about 50 unpublished works of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. It's unfortunate they are not published, and I don't think they ever will be published. But while doing that discovery or going through the works, I found one manuscript, and I read it, and I said, this has not been published. So I contacted Professor Frederick Denny, who's an expert on Indonesian Islam, because he did produce a series of books on world religions, and I asked him, is this the same manuscript which you have? And he said, no. So I went ahead, I revised it, I updated it. It took a time because it was written a long time ago, 20 years had passed or so. And so I updated it and it was published. It is also available on Triple IT website. It's called Islam, Religion, Practice, Culture, and World Order. And then recently, Alhamdulillah, since now I am a non-resident research fellow at Shenandoah University, Dr. Yaqub Mirza, who is the president of the Center for Contemporary Islam and the World, Islam in Contemporary World at Shenandoah University, he came up with the idea that we should produce a volume called Essential Writings of Ismail al-Faruqi. This book was published in 2021. It has selected and it has articles of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. So it is a good textbook material if you are working on Ismail al-Faruqi. I have shared this with Professor Kamaruzzaman, and this is available to you. It has a foreword by Dato Seri Anwar Ibrahim, who was also close with Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, but when he wrote the foreword for this, he was not the Prime Minister yet. And it was also reviewed by Professor John Esposito. Okay, so my presentation today is going to be made up of 6 parts. It's not going to be very long. I try to condense it. I'll talk about his biography, and I will talk about his contribution as intellectual mujahid. Now, this is a very interesting term. You have not heard this term before. This term of intellectual mujahid as scholar activist is coined by Professor Esposito, because when I was publishing the work on his fellowship in honor of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, I wrote mujtahid, and Professor John Esposito said, no, he was a mujahid, and truly he is a mujahid. He died as a mujahid in the field of knowledge. He was not in the field of war and all other things, but in the field of knowledge. And he was a scholar activist. Then I will talk about his views on pre-Hijra Islam, which is mostly a neglected topic of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi's contribution, and his Ummatic methodology and Islamization of Knowledge project. He's mostly known for Islamization of Knowledge project, but actually he doesn't regard Islamization of knowledge as his main contribution. I will come to that later on, and I also talk about his view of interreligious dialogue. Okay, so he was born in Palestine. We are hearing a lot of news of Palestine, what is going on. About 30 to 40,000 people have been killed. And we are hearing of constant pain and bombing and murder of women and children. So he was a Palestinian, and he's a Palestinian scholar and activist, and he was also a governor of Jalili. Jalili is the city of Isa alayhi salam, and then he was a professor at Islamics. He did not call it Islamic studies, but as Islamics at Temple University and Syracuse University. Actually, if you ask me, what was he in life as a life person, because I've lived with him, he was a person who was like an encyclopedia, walking encyclopedia, very, very well learned. You could talk to him on any topic and he would respond. And he was not a ordinary scholar like us, who know very little, but to very vast knowledge because he was trained as a philosopher. Was trained as a philosopher, and and then he went to the study of Islam, not as in the traditional manner. Of course, he knew traditional Islam, but as a phenomenologist and as an historian of religion. Uh, that is his main contribution. Philosopher as a phenomenologist of religion and a historian of religion, and of course, interreligious dialogue. So his, as I said, and he focuses on the importance of the concept of tawheed and intellectual jihad. And as I mentioned here, he has contributed to the many. He was a scholar activist. He was on the ground with the students, well, like with us. We may have disagreements sometimes, but he would he would engage with his students like a father, like a friend, and maybe sometimes we had to have sometimes we had disagreements. Uh, Sometimes we had disagreements, and we would argue with him, and then after some time, we'd say, "Okay, Imtiyaz, let's go for lunch or let's go for dinner." So he was like we used to call him Baba, and Professor Yusni Sabi, who was the former rector of EIN and UIN, Raneri, was also a student of Ismail al-Faruqi. So that's the link I share with you, UIN Raneri through Professor Yusni Sabi as well. So he was born in Jaffa in a religious family. He did his BA from the University of Beirut in 1942, and then he was appointed as a registrar of the city of Jerusalem, and he was appointed later as a district governor of Jalili. And when Israel was created in 1948, he left Palestine and went to study at American University of Beirut. In 1949, he entered Indiana University, got his master's degree in philosophy. In 1951, he got his second master's degree from Harvard University. In 1952, he got his PhD in Department of Philosophy from Indiana University. And the topic of his PhD dissertation is justifying the good, excuse me, metaphysics and epistemology of value, which is also available in a soft copy. After getting his doctorate, he was unemployed, and he mentioned this to us many times in the classroom that he had no job as a PhD scholar, having got his PhD. So he was a renovator of old houses. He would go and please mute yourself. Okay. So he used to be a renovator of old houses. He would buy old houses, renovate them, and then sell them again sell them again after they were refurbished and renovated. He was in the West in the 70s. Most of you are not from that age, when there was crisis in Islamic thought and Islamic education and Islamic studies. There were only three people who were top scholars of Islamic studies. One was Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, another was Professor Fazlur Rahman at the University of Chicago, and Professor Syed Hussain Nasser, who is now at George Washington University, who is still alive. So Professor Fazlur Rahman was an expert in Islamic thought and philosophy. Our famous Indonesian scholar Nur Khalis Majid and Shafi Ma'arif. They studied with Fazlur Rahman at the University of Chicago. Uh, Many students studied with Said Hussain Nasr and and others. We studied with Faruqi. And as I said, his areas are phenomenology and history of religion, interreligious dialogue, and Islamization of knowledge. After finishing his PhD, as I mentioned, he was unemployed, and so he went to Al-Azhar for 3 years or 4 years, and he's to study the traditional understanding of Islam. And from 59 to 61, he went to McGill University Institute of Islamic Studies, where he studied Judaism and Christianity very detailed, not like studying Christianity and Judaism from YouTube, but very detailed. He was very well, good grasp on Christianity and Judaism. And at McGill, he met Professor Fazlur Rahman. And both of them are kind of, thinkers and who were concerned about the state of the crisis in Muslim education. So they became friends and they wanted to, together, very close friendship. They have letters between them, which I have seen. And they wanted to raise the level of Islamic studies in the Muslim world, not in the West, though they were in the West, but in the Muslim world. So uh, they were invited by Professor I.H. Qureshi, that was in Pakistan, the Institute of Islamic Research, which is now the part of International Islamic University of Pakistan. So from 1961 to 63, Ismail al-Faruqi went to Pakistan. Now, you see, normally people don't go back to Indonesia or to Malaysia or to India or to Pakistan because the conditions are not what you want. You don't have all the space for intellectual development. But he was committed to the upliftment of the Ummah. So he went to Pakistan. And his goal was teaching and researching about Islam in modern age. But Pakistan, as you know very well, was created in the name of Islam. But he soon got dissatisfied. He saw the Pakistani people, no, not only Pakistani, most of the Muslims are lethargic, are lazy, are not interested in the upliftment of the Ummah. They are fighting among themselves. So he said that they are not concerned with the purpose of the creation of Pakistan. So, and he writes in his letters, which I have read, uh, that they were only interested in drinking chai or tetare, you know, and coffee, and just not concerned with the development of the Ummah. So in 1964, he went back to the United States and he got a job at Syracuse University. So you see, this is a concern which we have on ground, especially for the young generation. We have to contribute, we have to commit ourselves to the development of the Ummah. And today is very difficult, especially in the age of all these gadgets, which control our life, and AI coming very soon, how AI is controlling, how Google is controlling our life. But whether it was their age or our age, we are always controlled by somebody else, our intellectualism. In 1968, he was appointed as professor of Islamics at the Department of Religion in Temple University, and he was remained there until his death in 1986, when he was murdered, he and his wife. Now, I need to mention something very interesting here. In 1986, as I said, I was his last student assistant. Uh, uh, it was going to be summer holidays, and I was going to go to Thailand. And because at that time I used to live in Thailand. So one day he called me and said, Imtiyaz, you're going for a holiday. Have a nice holiday, and we'll see you after you come back. And actually, he has never called me before when I go for a holiday or for vacation from the university. So when I went back to Thailand, after 15 days, my friend called me and said, Professor Faruqi has been murdered. So suddenly I realized that why did he call me in 1986 when he has never done that before? So that was kind of a alamat, a sign to me saying salam. And since that time, and not before only that time, I have been always sentimental and intellectual relations with Prophet Ismail al-Faruqi. I believe he's still alive, as the Quran says. I read the ayat of the Quran, and I think I am one of the very few people who are working on Ismail al-Faruqi. Someone in Indonesia told me a few years ago when I was visiting Kajamada for 3 months that you are the only one working on Ismail al-Faruqi. Actually, that is true. I'm the only one who's working on Ismail al-Faruqi. While triple IT and all other institutions run away from talking about Ismail al-Faruqi. But I don't know what are their reasons, whatever. But I'm committed to continue his legacy. So his contributions were uh, to the academic study of Islam with the study of Christianity, history and phenomenology of religion and interreligious dialogue. As I said, though is best known for his project of Islamization of knowledge. Now, when I look at the all contributions of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, I find that there are 13 areas on which research can be done, on which research can be conducted, and on which we can study about. First is Uruba. Uruba is the concept of Arab, monotheistic Arabism, or Tawheed as Tawheed as coming from the culture of Uruba. Number two is pre-Hijrah Islam. Number three, religion and geography. We never study religion and geography. So he paid a lot of attention to religion and geography. Very interesting because religions are located in geography, which is very important. Quranic tafsir, Mu'tazila thought he has been accused of being a Mu'tazili. He was a rationalist. He was not very close to Sufism. Christian ethics, Muslim-Christian dialogue, science and values in Islam, Islam and art, very much. He and his wife was an expert in Islam and aesthetics. Essence of religious experience in Islam, Islam and culture, Islam and human rights. And his final contribution was, towards the end, he talked about meta-religion. Meta-religion is a religion beyond religion, not as a culture, not religion as we practice, as a denomination, but as meta-religion, which is basically the concept of the idea of Din al-Fitra, and the concept of the original religion of humanity. Okay, so as I said again, I'm saying he made important contributions to the field of history of religion. So he required us to study about ancient Near Eastern history. Professor Faruqi saw that in Arabian theater, in Arabia as a territory, as a land space, there is the contest between Tawheed and Shirk, monotheism and polytheism. So Tawheed and Shirk can only happen in the environment as a binary, as a contesting religious ideas. So where there is Tawheed, the opposite of Tawheed is Shirk. So for Professor Faruqi, Islam is monotheic ethical vision, and it is rooted in Deen, as mentioned in the Quran. It is emphasis on monotheism, universalism, tolerance, and life affirmation. And this, the other concept of religion is mythopoeic religion, a religious worldview, which is polytheistic. Those who are mythopoeic, who are polytheistic, who are mushrik. Now, mushrik of Arabia, not mushrik. We are using the word mushrik and kafir in a very loose term. He never used it in that way. A mushrik has very difficulty in transcending to the level of Tawheed. So the opposite, that is, he described the shirk as mythopoeic. So monotheic and mythopoeic are the two contrasts found in Arabia, in the religious worldview from Arabia. Arabia as a big mass from Mesopotamia to Yemen to all the peninsular Arabia. And this concept of shirk and kufr are related only to that region, and it cannot be applied to Hinduism, which is henotheistic religion. You can look at that term, henotheistic, and non-theistic Buddhism, and also to the religions of Africa, China, and Japan. So when we study religion, we have to understand the environment in which they are in which they originate, in which they emerge, in the as they are conveyed to the prophets and to the sages. So we have sages like Buddha and other Lao Tzu and Confucius and several others religious figures, religious functionaries. So for Ismail al-Faruqi, Islam is the first and the last religion to be revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he called very important, very interesting. When we went there to study for the first time, and he said that we Muslims should study pre-Hijrah Islam. Our problem is this, that we start studying Islam with the beginning of the revelation of the Quran, but we don't look about the earlier roots of Islam, pre-Hijrah Islam. So we have to study ancient Near East. We have to study about Babylon. We have to study about Mesopotamia. And because when you read the writings which have come down to us from pre-Hijrah Islam, you will find a lot of stories. There's a story of the creation of a couple. There is a story of Gilgamesh, and there is a story of the flood, which is repeated in the Quran and the Bible, and about Egypt and Persia, and also about the Hebrews and Aramaic. Aramaic is the language of Ibrahim alayhi salam and also of Isa alayhi salam, Syriac and other texts. So he asked us to read these important texts, ancient Near Eastern texts of pre-Hijrah Islam. We as students, we said when we went to study with him, we thought that, oh, we are going to study about Islam. But actually, he made us read this text about Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish and all about ancient Arabia. So these are the texts which we studied. And I'm very much interested that we and you as young generation should study about pre-Hijrah Islam. If you have access to the internet, you can go to the website of biblical archaeology, and there's a lot of archaeological discoveries done about pre-Hijrah Islam, but of course they don't call it pre-Hijrah Islam. But we can benefit from the study of archaeology, religious archaeology of the Near East, and also of the region where we live here in Nusantara, and connect it with Islam. I do a lot of work on Islam and Buddhism, and I see a lot of parallels between Islam and Buddhism in my own work. Okay, so for pre-Hijrah Islam I already mentioned about you. What is pre-Hijrah Islam? It is the concept of Din al-Fitra, or religion as a natural religion. Not religion of nature, but natural religion of human temperament. He held that Din al-Fitra, or religion naturalist, is rooted in the Quranic teaching. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent his prophets to every community, is speaking in their language. This we know very well. It is there in the Quran. The Quran mentions about that bilisani. Allah has sent the prophets bilisani, in their own languages. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, the Quran mentions the 25 prophets of Arabia, but at the same time, the Quran talks about many prophets whom the Quran does not mention. That the verse says, Lam naqsus alayk. There is no qasas, there is no qissa, no narratives about other prophets. So it is the job of us who are studying Islamic studies to study about the prophets and sages about whom they are not mentioned. Like today's Jummah, we read Surah Al-Kahf. But even in Surah Al-Kahf, there is the story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. You see, so Khidr was not a prophet, but he was a sage. But Musa alayhi salam had to study and learn with him. So all this is there which we need to learn. And he called upon the Muslims that we should not begin only with this, beginning with the Sirah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we need to go back and study.
Kurang parang di Palestina.
Please mute. I cannot continue once. Okay, so where was I? So because if we study pre-Hijrah Islam, we will be stronger in building interreligious tolerance and present Islam as the religion of tolerance, which unfortunately is not the image which the world has. So he talked about original religion, Islam as the original religion, as Deen, And we commonly say that there are 124,000 prophets which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent to humanity, but we don't have the list. So it is our job as students of Islamic studies to study about pre-Hijrah Islam. And that study will lead us to the idea to understand the concept of meta religion. I'll not go into detail here, but he has an article on that of meta religion. So, what is Islam for him? For Professor Faruqi, basing on the Quran, there are three dimensions to Islam. One is ideational. It is an idea of Tawheed, which is the core idea of Arab consciousness. Number two, it is axiological. It gives us values and ethics about piety and about world affirmation. And third is aesthetics. Quran, as a revelation, has an aesthetical dimension. The tajweed, the tartil, the architecture and the paintings and the music and the calligraphy, all these are the expressions of Islamic worldview. So Islamic worldview is made up of, is ideational, is axiological, and it is aesthetical. Okay, and now what is his methodology? His methodology is ummatic in orientation. Unfortunately, we don't talk much about the ummah today because we are divided. What is going on in the Middle East? 57 Muslim countries cannot do anything. We can only criticize and feel pain in our heart. So ummatic methodology means to bring together the ulama and the social scientists and the professionals to work together to study and to develop Islamization of knowledge. We need to it's a joint project. Islamization, the methodology of Islamization of knowledge is a joint project between not only the ulama. For Faruqi, everyone is an alim. A scientist is an alim. A medical doctor is an alim. A chemist, chemist is an alim. A physicist is an alim. Alim does not mean only the ulama, religious scholars. And then we have to address the challenges facing the ummah in the post-colonial era and the crisis in Muslim education. So, and Professor Faruqi had many students who were not Muslims who studied with him. As I mentioned, Professor John Esposito was the first PhD student of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi, and also his first PhD student. Okay, and as I said, he was critical of Sufism, but he was very much influenced by Mu'tazilism. Mu'tazila thought rationalism, but at the same time, he was also influenced by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's concept of Tawheed. So very, very strange combination. Even I cannot understand this. So he combines rationalism with the concept of Tawheedi theology of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So for Faruqi and he has been accused of being a Mu'tazila. So he was a Muslim of the modern age. He was a Tawheedi rationalist, an intellectual revivalist, and as I said, I have said that he was a polymath. Now he wrote in English and Arabic, and he was an Arab. He looked at Islam as from the view of Uruba, but not as an Arab nationalist, but as from the concept, from the understanding of Arab consciousness. And Arab consciousness is based on Tawheed. So for him, the term Semitic or Semites is an invention of the European scholars of the Bible. So today, these days, even today, we have this issue from Israel, and they say only they are Semite, and everybody else is not. Actually, no. The word Semite is very, very large. It includes the Arabs, it includes the Jews, it includes the Christians, it includes everyone in the Middle East. So Arabian religious culture theater extends from Mesopotamia to Syria, Palestine, and Peninsular Arabia. So let me talk here again about his concept of Arabism. There are three monotheistic streams in Arabism, in Uruba. And they are represented in the three religious traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They make up the Arabic stream of being. He saw the sources of Muslim civilization located in the religious consciousness of the Arabs or Arab al-Arib, Arab al-Ariba, Arab al-Ariba, and distinguish it from those al-Arab al-Mustariba, means those who are not Muslims, not Arabs, but they have adapted Islam, Arabic language, and Islamic religious consciousness, but not necessarily the Arab culture. And this is what we are. Like we are Muslim Arab. We are Muslim, but we don't take Arab culture. We have our own culture. Like these days, we have the Nusantara culture. We have the African culture. We have the Indian culture. We have so many cultural diversity within the ecumen of the Islamic world, of the Muslim world. So Tawheed is the basis, is the greatest gift of the Arabs to human consciousness. You see, the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Christians and the Jews, they have made their own contribution. But where did the Tawheed come from? The Tawheed, the concept of Tawheed, Islamic monotheism, is the gift of the Arabs to the Muslim world. When you go to Makkah or for Hajj or Umrah, you will feel that understand the consciousness of religious consciousness of Tawheed, which you cannot really experience very much here in Nusantara, where we have so much water and so much. It's a different geographical environment. So Uruba is an integral part of Arab consciousness. Okay, this I mentioned already, so I'll just skip this. Okay, as I said, in the field of Islamic thought, he stressed on the concept of Tawheed and Adl, and these were most important topics for him, Tawheed and Adl, because he was a Palestinian Muslim, and as a phenomenologist of religion, he was influenced by the works of Al-Biruni, Ibn Hazm, Ash-Shahrastani, Ibn Taymiyyah, which we don't look, which we normally don't study much about these three concepts. Okay, so al-Faruqi was the foremost phenomenologist and of our age. Now, Islamization of knowledge was adopted in 1977 Makkah conference because it was the aim was to address the question of crisis in Muslim educational system, because after colonialism, what happens is that most of the Muslim universities and Muslim colleges, they were teaching the Western syllabus. Even in Indonesia, you have the Berkeley School of Economics, and so it was all Western syllabus. But we need to have our own approach to knowledge. So that is what Islamization of knowledge is all about. I remember myself as a young student of political science. I used to go to bookstores and I used to look for books on Islam, but nothing was available. But I studied Plato, Aristotle, whatever you have, Bertrand Russell and all that. But Islam was never taught. So in 1977, when there was the first Islamic World Conference, which led to the formation of Islamic universities and the project of Islamization of knowledge. Now, when we look at Islamization of knowledge, this is the original book, 1982 edition, which Professor Faruqi wrote himself. And then this is the second version, 1997 version, which came after his death. So I have, this is not available, but I have a copy of it. But mostly people read this one, the 1997 edition, which was edited. So why was it edited? There's a difference between 1982 version and 19 edition and 1997 edition. 1997 is more diluted version of Islamization of knowledge, because professors at IIUM Malaysia said, oh, it is a very difficult task which Professor Faruqi has laid down. His plan of approaching knowledge that is very, very difficult. What is project? His main project approach to Islamization of knowledge is that if Muslims want to succeed in the area of knowledge, we have to master the disciplines. We have to produce theories and methods. We are the data. We should not remain data. Most of the time, Western scholars study us as data, and they come to Indonesia, they come to Malaysia, they come to Africa to study Muslim societies, and then they invent theories about us. but we are not able to develop theories about ourselves. But we remain the data, but we are not able to theorize about ourselves. So Islamization of knowledge is about developing theories, and that is our lacune. That is what we lack. So it is easy to borrow and criticize and talk about the conspiracies. I'm so tired and boring. Everybody is saying, "Oh, there is conspiracy, Jewish conspiracy against us, Christian conspiracy against us." I said, I'm not interested in them. We have to do our own hard work and develop sound scientific theories, which are based on the project of Islamization of knowledge. And Professor Islamization of knowledge has many thinkers, like say Naqib al-Attas, Abu Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Taha Jabir al-Alwani, Muhammad Kamal Hassan, Fatih al-Malkawi, and also in Indonesia, like Az-Zumar the Azra, good friend of mine, I miss him a lot, and also Nur Khalis Majid and uh, Shafi Marif. Uh, you call him Bubuya, right? Buya Shafi Marif. So they're all part of this project together. Okay, so this is theory. Let me skip. Now, coming to interreligious dialogue. We also hear a lot of interreligious dialogue today. What is interreligious dialogue? Interreligious dialogue started after the Second World War in 1948, when the World Council of Churches, which is the Protestant body of churches, Protestant churches, and the Catholic and the Vatican, the Vatican II came up with a document called Nostra Aetate about the relationship between Christianity and other religions. So the Vatican II was for the first time was for the first time that Christianity started recognizing the existence of non-Christian religions. Before this, no. So it was a mission. There was a movement from mission and conversion to dialogue. So we should know this. And this document of Nostra Aetate, which came out in the Vatican II, it talks about Islam. But Professor Faruqi said this approach to Islam is very narrow. It mentions Siti Maryam, it mentions the Quran, it mentions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it does not mention Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So don't be taken over, by this talk of dialogue. We should know what is needed in dialogue, what is missing in dialogue. Prophet Muhammad is missing in dialogue. So unless and until they don't recognize Prophet Muhammad as a prophet after Isa alayhi salam, we need to engage in constructive dialogue. See, I do a lot of work on Islam and Buddhism. If you ask me why I'm doing that, so I said we have done dialogue for 1400 years, but there's not much from the other side. So I better study more about Buddhism and Chinese Taoism and Confucianism. So Professor Faruqi's view is that we need to study, when we study dialogue, we should go back to Nicaea. And Nicaea is the pre, what is called as ante-Nicene fathers. What was the debate in Christianity about Christology, about who was Christ? And because most Christianity today is based on Trinity and divinity of Jesus, which comes from Nicaea. So we have to, if you want to do dialogue, we need to go back to study Christianity before Nicaea. So if you ask Professor Faruqi, and he himself said, my main book is not Islamization of knowledge. My main work, my major contribution, my magnum opus, my best book is Christian ethics. And this is, in this way, he was al-Biruni of the modern age. And he was a Christian scholar, a Muslim scholar of Christianity, but not like whom we see on the social media. It is very interesting. When he used to talk about Christianity, once one of our professors, Christian professors, told me, al-Faruqi teaches our religion to us. So this was kind of their recognition that he really knew Christianity very well. So this is the photo of the book Christian Ethics. This is the original, and this is the Malaysian edition that has come out. Now I need to, since we are in the age of crisis, he wrote a book on Islam and the problem of Israel. And this book is available also in PDF. I can share a copy. As a Palestinian, he saw the problem of Islam, of Israel, as having no precedent in Islamic history. Before, Jews, Christians, Muslims used to live together in Palestine. The Muslim world has has when we're talking about the question of Israel, it is not about modern colonialism or crusade. Rather, it is more than that. And in this book, he goes and talks about the nature of Zionism, its history, and what has kept it alive, and what is the question facing us, how to deal with secular Palestinian state. Is this the answer to the problem of Israel? So you can know every day we are hearing, whenever you put on the TV, you hear about what is going on in Gaza. And they are pushing them and attacking them, telling them go north, go south, and then bombing them, and then bombing them. So his book on sorry, Islam and Israel, the problem of Israel, he got very much criticized. He got letters of threat. He got letters of attack. They said, we will kill you, we will attack you, you are this and you are that. And I've seen all those letters of threats to him. Okay, so let me conclude here. Now, it is very interesting. Today, 38 years after his death, we are still talking about the importance of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi. I'm very, very glad that young students like you are here interested in learning about Ismail al-Faruqi. Not only you, but last week I gave a talk to Ibn Khaldun University in Turkey on Ismail al-Faruqi. And then before that to one Griffiths University, no, not Griffith, another university in Australia. So I've been talking about Professor Faruqi in many places, and he was killed by someone whom we knew. He was a student. The person who killed Professor Faruqi, excuse me, was his name is Yusuf Ali. He was an American convert to Islam. He had a psychological problem. He used to move among us, the student, and he even attended the janazah after killing Professor Al-Faruqi and his wife. And he was then arrested because that's how, first the police could not find out who murdered Professor Faruqi, but later on they were able to find him. Professor Faruqi held that Islam was not opposed to modern science and technology, whether it is past or modern. His one point, he said, is that as Muslims, as Islamization of Knowledge Project, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has been invented, but we have to make it better. So Islam is a religion, it is a worldview. It is a process of knowledge when we should engage in knowledge without apologizing, but developing new theories about the role of Islam and in a role of Islam in non-nationalistic terms. And unfortunately, we don't talk about Ummah, but today we talk a lot about our nationalism. His book, Christian Ethics, is a very interesting book. I would recommend you to read it. And today, Islamization of Knowledge project has more challenges. Unfortunately, it is not much talked about. It has been abandoned, as I said. But we have new challenges. The challenge of postmodernism, artificial intelligence, climate change. So what is the role of Khalifa fil Ard? And this is the challenge of educational project of Islamization of knowledge, because it is an ongoing venture. It cannot stop. And it concerns both the epistemological and ontological understanding of Islamic worldview. I will end here my PowerPoint, and then we can go into questions and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf for a very magnificent material and also explanation towards the Islamic contemporary by Ismail al-Faruqi. We've been brought to dive into the perspective of Ismail al-Faruqi and all the things that had been explored and also had been delivered well by Ismail al-Faruqi with all his books. And also on the record, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf also writes a book about Ismail al-Faruqi. Does it mean that you are a big fan of Ismail al-Faruqi, Doctor?
I'm a student, direct student of Ismail al-Faruqi.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say that way, that I see myself as a student of Professor Ismail al-Faruqi and one who continues his legacy. Yeah,
I see, I see. Being a
yeah.
student also write about a teacher that because you think that his knowledge and his perspective is inspiring so much.
Yeah, yeah. Because you see, we are formed by our teachers. If somebody asks me, who are you? I say, I'm a student of Faruqi. Or you would say, I'm a student of Nur, or Nur Khalis Majid, or I'm a student of Azumardi Azra. So I'm formed by my teacher. This is the Islamic tradition, actually.
I see. Super
Yeah,
interesting, Doctor. We can knew a lot about Ismail Faruqi perspectives and also insights through what you've been delivered just now. So,
yeah.
thank you so much again, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. Ladies and
Welcome.
gentlemen, we have a special guest between us. This special guest will be given a special time to give some words beyond the theme of today's webinar. We have Professor John
Esposito.
Espiro, the legend of Islamic study, and also the direct student of Ismail al-Faruqi itself. Do we have Dr. Professor John Espiro on the board?
Yeah, you need to unmute him.
Oh,
Yes, yes, I will open this.
Unmute him and the camera.
Professor John Esposito.
He cannot hear you.
Yes.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
please give some words from your side to us now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I'm sure I had to join a little bit late, but if Imtiyaz hasn't mentioned this, as he likes to say, I was the first PhD with Ismail al-Faruqi, and then he was, because of when Ismail passed, the last PhD student with Ismail. I think that the talk, and I've heard my colleague, many times talk about Ismail, but he's clearly the most knowledgeable person in terms of depth of understanding and breadth of understanding of Ismail. But I do agree, or would emphasize the fact that Ismail is and his writings are um, very much relevant today, in that, unfortunately, they haven't, you know, it hasn't actually he hasn't actually been taught in many places. I've been invisible until now, but I think that when you really look at his approach to Islam, first of all, Ismail began, at least when I was teaching with him, when I was studying with him, Ismail began as, if you will, an Arab and an Arab nationalist in many ways, Palestinian nationalist, and Islam was part of that identity. But during the time that we were at Temple, clearly he flipped it so that Islam was at the top, and then the other followed from that in terms of one's identity and one's commitment. He, in his time, and for those of you that are younger, it may be difficult for you to really fully understand that we're talking about going back to the 1960s and that period of time, which at that time, relatively speaking, Islam was invisible in the United States. We had Muslims, but they were seen more in terms of their national background. Somebody was an Egyptian or Lebanese, but as a religion, we had very few mosques. Islam was not taught in most schools or universities. Groups like the American Academy of Religion did not even cover Islam until the time of Ismail and then some of his graduate students, and I was lucky enough to be among them, basically pushed to have Islam included there. So in many ways, during his lifetime, he didn't get the attention that he deserved. On the other hand, his great contribution, I'll be brief in my comments because I'm sure other people will want to talk. His great contribution from my point of view was the fact that he every year went and got scholarship money in order to then bring Muslims from the Muslim world to come and study at Temple. But in those days, you were supposed to major in one religion and minor in two. And so when they came, they would study Judaism and Christianity, you know, as well as bring their interest in Islam. And so for me, what was unique about my experience was that if I had been studying Islam at the few universities that had it, I would have been studying it more in terms of as history, you know, the history of Islam, or texts, you know, of the Islamic period. But being in a class where the vast majority of students were Muslim and where you had a Muslim teacher, that made Islam come alive for me. I had absolutely no interest in studying Islam. And I only took the first course because the chair put pressure on me to take a course with Ismail. But he made it come alive. And of course, he educated me to have no job, because in those days, as Imtiyaz will tell you, there weren't any jobs, very few. I think there was maybe one job when I was on the job market. So, I mean, I was hired to teach world religions. And so because of that kind of difference, on the one hand, he trained many of us, but many went back. And as I've discovered when I started to go to, we had so many people from Southeast Asia. And it's interesting, since this lecture is in Southeast Asia, that at a conference that I gave, I ran in Kuala Lumpur, a Muslim woman scholar said to me at a certain point, "Don't you realize that you're the Don of the Temple Mafia?" And only about 5 years ago, my wife and I were back in Malaysia. We've been there many times. We went to a big wedding. I didn't know what we were going to or getting into. And of course, the father of the bride belonged to the Temple Mafia, and they had 2 tables with Temple graduates. And so that was one of his big contributions, that he educated. For me, it was for Americans like me, that he made Islam come alive, and the students made Islam come alive. Because the students, when they would answer, were not just answering it in terms of their knowledge, they were answering it in terms of their faith very often. You know, it was a combination of that. And I think that they went back, but in terms of the extent to which in the West, Ismail has received attention, he's received it, but nowhere near what he should receive. And it's because of the work of Imtiyaz. In fact, when he was a visiting scholar with us and then was a triple IT, going through all that library and all the documents, that has really put Ismail, you know, more, if you will, in perspective. And I think that given the vitality of Islam in Indonesia, in my experience anyway, and the many times that I went there, you know, but back a number of years, it's important to really see Ismail among and with the other scholars that one looks at, you know, like Dastur and many others. So I'll end my comments there and turn it back to the moderator.
Latifani? Yes.
Okay, am I audible, sir? Everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for Professor John Espiro for bringing some insights for us about Islamic contemporary, also from the perspective of Ismail al-Faruqi, which also been given so many spirits about the perspective of Ismail al-Faruqi itself, because he's the student and also got lots from Ismail al-Faruqi itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, also Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, we have some questions here from the audience and the participants of this webinar.
Yeah.
Should we go to the Q&A session, Doctor?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
There-
I
have
see. Yeah,
there
I
is
see
a
some questions in the
question
chat box.
in the chat room
Yeah.
from Dr. Wahyudin Halim.
Yeah. First, let me thank John. It's night time here there in Washington D.C. Thank him for joining us
Yes.
this morning here in Southeast Asia. So, John, thanks a lot. I always look John as my Don of Mafia Don. I look upon him with a lot of respect and a lot of affection. John is very close to me as Faruqi. Okay, now there's a question here about the personal relationship between Nasser and Faruqi when they were still teaching at Temple. Now, this is a very interesting question. You see, Faruqi was hired at Temple University as a scholar of Islamic studies. Uh, uh,
Yes.
okay, Faruqi was hired, as I mentioned earlier, hired as professor of Islamic studies. And he was the only one who was teaching Islam, and which John mentioned already. Now, when 1979, when the Iranian Revolution took place, Sayyid Hussein Nasser, as you know very well, or you may not know, was very close to the Shah of Iran. So the CIA rescued him from Iran, from Ayatollah Khomeini's revolution, and brought him to Temple University because that was the only program of Islamic studies and world religion. And from there, he went to, and from there, the American government or State Department established another program at George Washington University, where Sayyid Hussein Nasser went. Now, both of them were good scholars, but you see, one problem with Faruqi, Nasser, and Fazlur Rahman is that they had, and Naqib al-Attas, they had their ego clashes of ego. And this is a disease. We scholars, we should not academically, we should avoid them, avoid this kind of thinking, you know. It does not help at all because it does not help the students. It doesn't matter whether you are Shia or Sunni. So we would see that Faruqi and Nasser, when they saw each other, oh, they would really hold each other, hug each other, yeah, yaqi, and this and that, you know. But at the same time, when they separated, they had their own view. For Nasser, it was always Persian Sufism. For Faruqi, it was Uruba and Islamization of knowledge. But the next generation of scholars which came, like Professor Mahmoud Ayub, who succeeded Faruqi and others, they were not like that. They were not like that. For Nasser, I respect Nasser. I studied with Nasser too. But for him, the whole world of Islamic studies is limited to 14th century Iran and Ishraqi school of Sufism. So he's only located within that and doesn't go out of that. While Faruqi is very, very macro, you know, he sees the world in a macro sense of the term, as a worldview. So, but then I studied with Ayub, and Ayub was neither Sunni nor Shia. They did not engage in this thing. Actually, Faruqi also was not very much into Shia Sunni thing. He was invited to Iran. He went to Iran many times, and he also studied Ikhwan al-Safa, and he studied also Iran as a part of Islamic civilization. So that is my answer to that question. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's only one question here. Any other question you can ask directly or just ask in Bahasa and then it can be translated.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. From all the participants among 65 people on the board, is there anyone wanting to ask questions to Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf regarding to the theme that we're having in this webinar? please raise your hand so I can give you the opportunity to speak directly to Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf to ask the question. Is there anyone? Or maybe you can type the questions in the box. Anyone wanting to ask questions? Or should we go to...
Yeah, Iska.
Okay, we have Iska here.
Yes, please.
Sir Iska, please
Yes,
introduce
can you hear
yourself.
me
Yeah.
clearly?
Yes, you are audible. Please introduce yourself and begin to ask your question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your kind opportunity. Uh, in advance, I'm very sorry because I can't turn on my cameras due to the connections problem. So do apologize, Professor Yusuf and Professor Espito. I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Iska. I'm from the Ministry of Law and Human Rights of Republic of Indonesia. Actually, I'm also Achinese, just like Professor Kamaruzzaman and others. I'd like to ask about Professor Faruqi related to the conflict and maybe the colonialism on the Palestinian territory. Since Professor Faruqi was born in Jaffa, I'd like to know about his perspective related to this matter. I mean, how about his perspective or maybe his argument about the Israeli occupations on the Palestinians territory? Maybe just about that, Professor. Thank you for your kind sharing.
Thank you very much, Ishaq. Yeah, your question is right. Professor Faruqi had to leave Palestine, uh, had to leave Palestine because of the creation of Israel. But his view, he was not against Judaism, uh, or, Judaism or Christianity. He was against Zionism. And that's what is very, very clear. He was against Zionism. And he was a Palestinian to the core of his being. And for him, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Palestine and Mesopotamia is all made up of this uh, Uruba culture and civilization. So he was critical of Zionism. That's what his book is about, which I showed to you, Islam and the Problem of Israel. So he had very close Jewish friends. He had close Christian friends who were from the Middle East, from Beirut and all, and also from Palestine. But he had problems with Zionism just like everybody else has, because it is colonization. It is the grabbing of the land of the people and exodus and the Nakba and the expelling of the natives of the native Palestinians out of their own land, and that's the whole problem which we are facing until today. And today it is even it has become worse. So he was critical of Zionism, but not of Judaism.
One.
All right. So I think he was proactively speak and I think told the world what's happened in Palestine and what's happened with Israel actually, and it is not related to the religion to the certain religion like Judaism or something, but it is the colonialism or the occupation that they made that what he is standing against to them. Is that right, Professor?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your response, sir.
Welcome.
Hope you can join us in Aceh sometimes.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Iska, and also thank you so much, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, for the answer through the question that been asked by Mr. Iska. So, is there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Or should we go to, we have Professor Dr. Hafaz Burkani here on the board.
Yes. Prof. Hafaz, where are you?
Prof. Hafaz, are you on the board? I think Professor Hafaz is not responding. Should we go to the next question? Is there anyone on this 63 people on this webinar would like to ask question to our guest speaker, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, towards this theme of Ismail al-Faruqi? Anyone? Or maybe you can just type below on the
I have a
meeting chat.
question, Sister Latifa.
Sure. Please,
It's a
Professor.
very important question for us in our university, Professor Imtiyaz, about the concept of Islamization of knowledge. Do you think that this concept can be implemented, and how we can start that in terms of building the new paradigm of Islamization of knowledge in this contemporary era? And we do know that this concept from Ismail al-Faruqi and then been implemented in UIA and some university. But now in our university, especially at UIN, we want to develop a new paradigm of science or new paradigm of knowledge for our campus. Do you have that kind of trick or tip, and by picking or take a lesson learned from the legacy of almarhum Ismail al-Faruqi?
Yeah, your question is very right, actually. But let me inform you here.
Yeah.
The project of Islamization of knowledge is no more implemented in International Islamic University, Malaysia. They have abandoned it.
Oh.
Even Triple IT has abandoned Islamization of knowledge. They're talking about integration of knowledge. They always tell me, don't talk about Faruqi, don't talk about Islamization of knowledge. But it is interesting that you are asking this question. Yes, it can be implemented. It has to be improvised. It has to be improved, and it has to be made relevant to the challenges which we are facing. And the shortcut to Islamization of knowledge is to master the discipline. Most important. We should study anthropology, sociology, social sciences, humanities, natural sciences, whatever, that we master those disciplines as they are understood, as they are implemented, as they are applied uh, and researched in the world of knowledge. And then come up with our original theory, like Ibn Khaldun came with the theory of Umran. But we should not be stuck with Ibn Khaldun and, al-Farabi, Ibn Sina. We are still stuck there. That is nostalgia. Or like algorithm. Everyone says about al-Khwarizmi. Oh, he developed algorithm on which this whole internet works. But today, algorithm is more advanced than from al-Khwarizmi. So if al-Khwarizmi comes back and say, I don't know all this advanced algorithm application. So this is the challenge for your university, for how to implement this project of Islamization of knowledge with two approaches. The first one is master the discipline. Study anthropology as anthropologists do. For example, Clifford Geertz wrote about Islam observed, right? But do we have anyone in Indonesia who has answered Clifford Geertz' theory of Indonesia? He talks about religion of Java, but actually it's Islam. Okay, so we need Clifford Geertz, an Indonesian Clifford Geertz. We need an Indonesian Benedict Anderson. We study all this. Benedict Anderson never talks about Islam. He was a Marxist. He never talks about Islam. He is very critical of Nahdlatul Ulama because of his past. So we need scholars who are like Nur Khalis Majid. Yes, I respect him. We need more Nur Khalis Majid. We need more Shafi Ma'arif. We need more of Usman Oman Fadlur Rahman. He does great work, you know. I really appreciate his work. Who in Yogya. We need more Amin Abdullah. They're all doing Islamization of knowledge, but they're not calling it like that. So we don't have to get stuck with the term, but master the disciplines and don't remain the data. We should not remain data. We should develop theories. You know why I say that? I've been living in Southeast Asia for 30 or more years. I'm not from here, but I'm from Africa. I'm from Tanzania. But you see what happens when summertime comes, and John will like to listen to this. Before summer happens in the West, in America and UK, start getting emails from American and UK and French scholars saying, I'm coming to Jakarta, I'm coming to Kuala Lumpur, uh, I'm coming to Kuala Lumpur. Can I talk to you? Can I meet you? Can I take for you for lunch? I know what they want. They want information from me, and they give me a lunch. How much the lunch costs for them? $5. I said, no, I'm not available. I refuse because they will. Can you mute someone? Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Because what they will do, they'll collect information from me, from you, and they cannot speak Bahasa or they cannot speak Thai. You see? So they will hire Latifani or a young student, anybody, and give them some few dollars, and then they go back and they write a book about Indonesia. Oh my God, you cannot study Indonesia in one summer trip. Okay, so we have to be what scholars of that kind. We have to inspire ourselves. Professor Faruqi, as a Muslim scholar, an activist, as an intellectual mujahid, he was engaged 24 hours in the work of knowledge. I, as a student, remember that after Fajr, after Subuh, I normally used to sleep. But as a last student assistant, he would call me 6 o'clock. Imtiyaz, are you awake? I said, yes, 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 I'm awake. Actually, I'm sleeping. But because he was doing it all the time. So we need to do that. Master the discipline and produce. When we master the disciplines, we will be able to produce theories. Amin Abdullah does that very, very well. And don't remain the data. And this is my observation of being in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia for the last 30 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Latifani, there is a question in chat box. You can read it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question and also for the answer. So I have to highlight two things, that is mastering, what do we call it? Mastering the discipline,
disciplines.
and also collect the data to make it, to imply it to a new theory. Wasn't it, Dr. Imtiyaz?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you're right.
so we have another questions on the chat box, Doctor. We have questions from Miss Melly Fauzia. She asks, how did Ismail al-Faruqi navigate tension between maintaining the integrity of Islamic tradition and also adapting it to modern challenge?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I will say that we should not be threatened or feel frightened with modern challenges. Rather, we should, Islamic tradition, thinking critically, academically. Islamic tradition, when approached as an academic discipline, Islamic tradition, it can help you to navigate and adapt with the modern challenges. Now, in postmodern challenges, for example, Faruqi said once, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has already been invented. For example, the wheel of the Boeing or Airbus is so good already. It's fantastic. How we can make it better in terms as Khalifa fil Ard, who respect the, the, the environment, who respect the ecology, who respect that we do not destroy the environment. As a role of Khalifa fil Ard, we can navigate, we can adapt with the modern challenges. So I'm doing comparative religion. I do that I study all about Buddhism. That's my field. I read all the Buddhist texts. Some people will even say, oh, Imtiyaz has become a Buddhist. No, I've not become a Buddhist. But Buddhists tell me, oh, you know us very well. So we have to study the modern disciplines as they are, okay, but come up with our own answers. Don't. Our problem is that sorry for saying that, not saying this personally to Melly, but to all of us, to all the Muslim intelligentsia. Muslim intelligentsia today is timid. It does not want to take a stand and take a stand and be grounded on it and defend their position. We don't have to be apologetic. Whenever happens, when something happens, we say the Quran says this, the Quran says that. Yes, the Quran says that, but how do we apply the Quranic teaching in a innovative way, in a jihadi way, intellectually jihadi way? And this is how we will navigate with modern challenges. And the modern challenges that are very much, for example, we just had this modern big challenge of COVID-19. Is there an Islamic answer to that? Now they say, yesterday there's this big news of new pandemic coming. This is the bird flu. It is already spreading in Europe and in America, and it will come here. So are we going to close down everything again? So how do we respond to these modern challenges of ecology, environment? And Khalifa fil Ard has to take care of the environment. And this is a big challenge, global warming. Then we have the challenge of artificial intelligence. Our generation is totally controlled by this thing, by the phone, right? We get up, first thing we do is we go, when we open our eyes, we do this. Right before we close our eyes, we do this. So we have to not be controlled by technology. We have to respond to technology. We have to respond to technology. We have to respond to the challenges of technology. So for Faruqi was in his time, there were new challenges. There was this whole theory, approach to sciences, which was very, very empirical. But today, we are in a new era. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. But you see, the Muslim scholars in the past, Muslim science, Ibn Sina, al-Ghazali, al-Farabi, they took the knowledge from the Greeks, from the Indians, from the Persians, and developed it. They worked hard. It is really hard work. We don't do that. We don't do that. We should take the knowledge and work hard on it and then develop, like Ibn Sina did, like Ibn Khaldun did. But our problem is we live in the past. We don't live in the present. And this is our problem. And so this is our challenge. Modernism is not a challenge. We can face it. We can address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, and thank you so much for the question. So the key is it doesn't mean if we face the challenge of modern era, it doesn't mean we decrease our integrity of Islamic itself. We just need to develop the Islamic knowledge itself. Wasn't that what you mean, Doctor?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Like, for example, I'll give you another example. When I study Buddhism, so when I met the most senior monk of Buddhism in Indonesia, uh, his name is Panavaro. He is in Yogyakarta. When I met him, and he knows that I work on Buddhism, you know what he said to me? You have come so close to us. Yeah. We need to come close to you. Now that was a recognition. I'm not proud, but I said he recognizes that I have studied Buddhism as Buddhists understand. We need Al-Biruni, like Al-Biruni studied Hinduism. He lived with the Hindus. He studied Sanskrit. He lived in the temple. He lived with the priests. And he writes in Kitab al-Hind that what he is going to write in his book, the Muslim may not like it. Because we tend to be judgmental very immediately. We give judgment. We have to stop giving judgment. We have to welcome the contribution of every Muslim scholar and also non-Muslim scholars in the field of knowledge. We have to have our role, our place in the world of knowledge.
Super interesting. So that question you've been experienced on implying how being a Muslim and being inclusive at the same time, just exploring about many things beyond the beyond all the knowledge. So that is so interesting, Doctor. So much interesting point because it is everything that I just learned about this Ismail Faruqi things and all these contemporary Islamic things. It is really interesting. Of course, it should be also interesting for all 61 people on the board because we're also still waiting for another question because having such an amazing and magnificent speaker of today as Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf is such a privilege. So please use this privilege, guys, to just ask some questions and just take all uh, knowledge possible from Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. Is there any other
Yes.
questions, ladies and gentlemen? We're still waiting.
Kalau ada yang bertanya pakai bahasa Indonesia juga boleh.
Iya, diperbolehkan. Nanti boleh saya translate.
Ya, silakan adik-adik atau bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu. Ada pertanyaan? Sebentar, saya cek dulu ini ada beberapa.
We should not only be stuck saying that, oh, what ISIS does, what the extremists do is not in the Quran. John knows that very well, but we need to answer more than that. You say, what they are doing is not there in the Quran. It is not there in the Hadith. We need to, Professor Faruqi would say, yes, don't, yeah, when I wrote my first article paper for him, for his course, he told me, your paper goes out of my window. Your paper is useless. And he said, I will throw it out and you have to write your paper again. And one very interesting thing, which he said to me, and I never forget, John will know that, he told me, don't hide behind the Quranic ayat. What we do, we want to say something. We want to contribute something. But what we do, we put the ayat first.
Mm.
He says, put the ayat in the reference, in the footnote, or in the endnote. But say what you want to say in the text of your dissertation, of your paper, of your article. That's why I said we are timid. We hide behind the ayat of the Quran. We hide behind the hadith. And this is our problem. Like when you go to Friday khutbah, Friday Jummah prayer, it's always hadith, hadith, hadith. Yes, Kamar Zaman. And
Yes.
after that, what? After that, what? So, yes, hadith is important. I'm not munkir al hadith. Quran is important, but we should use them as the springboard from where our knowledge contribution comes.
It is
Or-
interesting, Doctor, because in nowadays, as we see, if we give some kind of knowledge and people will just react like, where's the proof? What is the dalil and everything? They don't really want to hear our explanation towards. What do you think about it?
There is a question in chat box for Tiffany. Please
Oh
read it.
yeah,
From Bu
I have a
Yuni.
question. Yeah,
Yes.
from Yair to Dr.
okay.
Imtiyaz Yusuf.
Yeah, al-Faruqi proposed 3 stages of Islamization of knowledge. Mastering the discipline, yes. Mastering the Islamic heritage, yes. And carrying creative synthesis. Okay, very interesting. Mastering the discipline. I'm talking from my field. Mastering the study of religion. Mastering the Islamic heritage. For example, knowing there was one student who wrote his thesis on Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm's reply to Christianity. So studying Ibn Hazm very, very well. Studying Al-Biruni, studying Ibn Sina very, very well. And then, you're right, that student produced a great thesis, but it was not liked by many of the professors because they said he was criticizing Christianity. But he was not criticizing Christianity. He was representing Christianity as understood by Christians. So creative synthesis will come out when when the other scholar, for example, other scholar will say that yes, you have mastered the discipline and you've come up with a new theory or new synthesis. For example, Professor Faruqi was very, very appreciative of the work of Wilfred Cantwell Smith. You may have heard of Wilfred Cantwell Smith. He was a professor at Harvard and at McGill, a great scholar of Islam. Okay, I'll give you two examples, one positive, one negative. And so Professor Faruqi said, we need people like Wilfred Cantwell Smith. He is like al-Biruni of Islam today, Christian al-Biruni. So that is what he was, Wilfred Cantwell Smith was able to do. But on the other hand, you have Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis also studied Islam very, very well. But he's a Zionist and is so critical of Islam because he knows Islam and Muslim tradition and our weaknesses very, very well. And people like Bernard Lewis and Samuel Huntington, they talk about Islam as violent religion. And so we just cannot say Islam is salam, Islam is peace. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Islam is salam, Islam is assalamu alaikum. John knows that very well. That is not a good answer. The good answer is we have to tell what are the sociological, what are the political, what are the economic causes for the rise of extremism, Muslim extremism, Muslim radicalism. What are the sociological reasons for that? What are the political economic reasons for that? Take the case of Muslim countries today. 57 Muslim countries. How many of them are democratic? Not more than 10. Indonesia, Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan, Senegal. I can't go more. I can't go further than that. That's 5, which come straight to my mind. But maybe 1 or 2 more I'm missing. But that's it, just 5. What are the rest? The rest are rich, really. The oil countries are very, very rich. All the Gulf countries are very, very rich. But you ask them, what is the best university in Qatar? What is the best university in UAE? They will tell you the Georgetown branch of Qatar, Georgetown branch in Qatar, Yale University branch in in UAE, or Harvard branch. So we are studying now. What we are doing, we have invited them to come and teach our young people to study their syllabus. So we are replicating what they are doing. For example, when the anthropologists come and study, lots of work on Islam is in the field of anthropology of religion. Brother Kamaruzaman and Sister Latifiani, I cannot read a book on anthropology more than 2 pages. Sorry, more than 2 pages. Because it is just observation of someone. But there's no beef in there. There's no beef in there. They observe, they come and stay with you for a few months at few villages, but nothing more than that. So we need to go beyond that to create creative synthesis. So my point again here is that we don't, if we are doing anthropology, just don't do anthropology as done by others, because they have weaponized anthropology. Lots of anthropology work on Indonesia, but we should master them and produce Indonesian anthropology. This is where the challenge is. How many Indonesian anthropologists are there? I don't think so. I cannot remember. Maybe you can tell me if there are any good anthropological works produced by Indonesian scholars or Malaysian scholars. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers and also for the question, Miss Yuni Roslaili. It is so much interesting that I can highlight that there are much of real example. Most important is how we have to imply the al-Faruqi 3 stages that is known as mastering more disciplines, master heritage of Islamic disciplines in Korea, declare sentences of birth, is meaning that we need to imply all those insights of Islamization into a real life thing, such as being told by Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. So,
You
Doctor, we
did.
also
You said
have
very well by saying we need to apply. Yeah.
One more question that is in Bahasa. Please translate it, sister.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So, Doctor, we also have these new questions from Miss Usfur. She asks a very good question. She asks, how do Ismail al-Faruqi see the habit of youth nowadays that is tend to commit such a criminal actions, just like drugs, free sex, and other things?
Very good question. Very good question. And yes, we have this problem. Drug addiction is the biggest problem among the Muslim youth in Nusantara. I asked the question. I used to be in Patani for 5 years. In Patani, there is a high level of drug addiction in the youth. Also in Bangkok. So the Muslims, what do? They don't drink alcohol, but they take drugs.
Very good
Drug.
point, Prof. I
Yeah.
like that point.
Yeah, and that leads to AIDS because of the syringes that they use, and also open sex. You know, your phone, all pornography is there, and our youth is looking at all this pornography which is available on the phone. Now the question is, why are they engaging in that? You just cannot say, oh, it is against Islamic akhlaq, it is against Islamic ethics. No, it doesn't work. The reason we have to find out. Again, go back. What is the reason? What is the political, economic reason that they are getting into that? That means there's a problem in our educational system. Just teaching religion, just teaching deen, okay, agama, or just teaching agama without critical thinking will not be able to help them to answer the existential questions of our age. What are the existential questions faced by the young youth these days? We need to address those questions of existential questions, which lead them to drug addiction. Why is there loneliness among them? You know, one reason for going into drug is loneliness, is alienation. This is Weber already talked about it, as alienation of the industrial age, where people are alienated. The reason is a Muslim cannot be an alienated person. A Muslim has to be an active person, an engaging person. Islam is a living religion. And we have to address the existential questions which lead our youth to such kind of activities. Now, even same sex may come up. You know, just by saying same sex is not allowed in Islam is not the answer. I don't think it's the enough answer enough. We cannot just say, oh, talk about Lut alayhi salam, you know. Yes, but how? Why is it happening? What are the medical reasons for this? What are the sociological reasons for this? Same with drug addiction. Same with sexual freedom. Maybe we are not giving enough freedom to our people to address this question. Our youth, we are not giving open forum to our youth to discuss these questions openly among ourselves. We don't give them the forum. We just, again, I say, we just got the Quran and Hadith. That is not enough. We need to have psychological counseling. We need to have sociological consultation. We need to have educational revision, curriculum revision. And those things have to address these questions as therapy. You know, we need a therapeutic answer to these questions of drug addiction, free sex, whatever you have. Muslims don't drink alcohol and don't eat pork, but they take drugs. Drugs is also haram, right? So we have to address, as I said, the different dimensions of the question. And that is the job of Islamization of knowledge. Yeah, thank you.
Very interesting, Doctor. I note some things that you said earlier. You said to answer these questions, you cannot just say, yeah, Islam prohibit that, blah blah blah. Quran say no and blah blah blah. But we need to find the logic in it because as I also part of Gen Z, we also need to see it critically in every way. So it is a must to describe the material of Islamic itself in a very critical way, so we can find the
Hmm.
logic in it. It is very interesting. I just got this amazing insight from you because as I see from lots of people out there, they really need to point out that Islam say no about it. But why? They couldn't really give us the logic explanation towards it. But it is a
Hmm.
very well and interesting answer. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I as a teacher, I'm a friend to my students. I am very friendly to my students. That some of my colleagues don't like me. That I'm too friendly with my students. Because I don't see. I forgot that I have a PhD. I forgot that I'm a doctor. I don't use all that. It's all past. It's gone. But I am a friend to my students. That's what Faruqi was. He used to cook food for us. He used to spend time with us. But we do not need to have a hierarchy between and difference between the student and the teacher, between the youth and the ulama. We have to open up. We have to become friends. I'm a friend to my children. You know, uh, my children are my friends. I'm not their baba who is going to like fear. They're afraid of me. No, no, no. They are my friends. Yes, I am their father, but at the same time, I'm their friend. We have to have this psychological uh, revolution also. Social psychology is important, very, very important. Yeah. So we have a lots and lots of problems, and they are increasing more and more with the passage of time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
Another
much,
question in
sir. So
Bahasa.
we have this another statement from Miss Usper. She said that she's in the middle of some kind of counselor session with one of her client, and her client gave some sort of statement saying that youth nowadays learn Islamic studies and another knowledge, but uh, and also they came to Islamic boarding school, but it doesn't mean that they can stop doing sins.
Yeah, going to Pasandran does not stop doing sin. Right? I think there's a lot of sin going on in Pasandran. There's a lot of sin going on in Pasandran. So Pasandran model has to modernize. You need more Gontar model. You know? The Pasantana has to modernize. The Toguru has to modernize. Just reading Kitab Kuning is not enough. Just memorizing Kitab Kuning is not enough. But the anthropologists and the sociologists like to do that. But I say, yes, Kitab Kuning is important. Pasantaran is important. But, you know, what is the role of Pasantaran? There should be Islamization of knowledge in Pasantaran. Now, very interesting. The Pasantaran model, as my research I do on Buddhism, is exactly modeled. Pasantaran in Indonesia is modeled on Buddhist schools, temple schools of the past of Indonesia. Indonesian past is Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. Borobudur is the most important monument in Indonesia of Buddhism in the world, and it is in Indonesia. Whenever I go to Jogja, I go to Borobudur. It's beautiful. It's so nice. So the Pasantanan model is exactly the replica of the Buddhist school which was in existence before before Indonesia became Muslim, before Java became Muslim, before Sumatra became Muslim. So you look at the Buddhist schools today in Thailand, Buddhist universities. I used to teach in Buddhist university in Thailand. They teach all the modern disciplines. They teach all the modern sciences, but we don't. We are still stuck. with our traditional method. You have to read in Jawi. Yes, I don't say no. That is our heritage. But after Jawi, what? This is the question Faruqi would ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently in the end of this webinar session today. We come to the conclusion that all things, all knowledge that been brought by Ismail Faruqi, anything but else just need to be implied better in our real life. That means we need to mastery and learn more about Islamic knowledge and also find the critical in it and then applying it in our real life, such engaging with all of with everyone and being inclusive because that's the key of all this perspective of modern Islamization. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to attend this morning webinar. We got so many knowledge from this webinar. We would like to say thank you very much to Professor Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf for giving us so many insights and knowledge about Islamic al-Faruqi perspective on the contemporary Islam. And also thank you so much to Professor Dr. Kamaruzaman Busama Ahmad for giving us opportunity to enjoy and engage with such a amazing speaker like Professor Imtiyaz Yusuf beneath us. And also thank you very much to all of the audience who had gathered and learned together in this webinar. I am Latifah Nilanar. Would like to apologize for any mistakes have been done during this webinar. And thank you very much to all of us. May Allah bless us in every way. And jazakumullah khairan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Thank you very much.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sister and brother, please fill the form of the Google sheet that I already distributed in chat box. Thank Professor Imtiyaz for everything, and Professor John Esposito, all of our comrades, fellows, colleagues who joined these webinars. And we will keep in touch again.
Terima kasih.
Ya, sama-sama. Kaptumakap, Ajan. And
Okay,
Ajan, I know Ajan Ampon also with us, Professor.
yeah, I saw her. Yeah.
Maybe later we invite her to talk about the gender issue in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, she's the right person to do that.
Yes, I will invite her to our webinar.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
He's driving. She's driving now. Okay, all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Million thanks.
Assalam. Yeah. Assalam. Thank you.
Terima kasih Latifah. You did a great job today.
Terima kasih Pak.
Ya,
Udah
sama-sama.
memberikan kesempatan.
Ini kalau bisa diinikan dulu, di foto dulu. Tadi saya foto sih.
Oh, oke. Kita ambil dokumentasi Pak ya.
Sebelum ini
Boleh.
60 lebih nih yang masuk.
Oh, tadi sempat Fanny ambil sih Pak, cuman cuma satu sheet.
Ya udah diambil
Atas
jauh
60.
lagi.
Oke.
Nanti kita undang lagi nih yang tadi.
Oke, boleh mungkin saudara-saudari, ladies and gentlemen, mungkin boleh buka kamera kalau mau, biar kita ambil sesi dokumentasi.
Ya, tadi saya ambil beberapa.
Oke, 1, 2, 3.
Ada Prof Hasan juga ini.
Oke. Full screen, next slide. Next slide.
Ya, ini ada Prof Ali juga ini, standby beliau. Nah, teman-teman, sorry saya di jalan ini nggak bisa di Banda Aceh.
Iya.
Ya semuanya Bapak Ibu, terima kasih. Ini luar biasa. Nanti kita sambung lagi. Saya juga sedang berbicara tadi kalau bisa Prof John Esposito nanti bisa juga menjadi narasumber kita. Thanks Professor John Esposito for joining us. I will end this forum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Cek.